A lot of redeye bass fishing just consists of wading up these beautiful streams. You know, these redeye bass, shoal bass, Choctaw bass, Guadalupe bass, these riverine bass species, they have really altered our perception of what constitutes bass habitat. For decades and decades, bass habitat equaled largemouth bass habitat, which really equaled stumps, submerged aquatic vegetation, trees, wood, that kind of thing. You know, if you throw smallmouth in there, yeah, some rocks, but usually you're thinking deep rocks and deeper rocks and deep rocky shorelines, beautiful clear natural lakes up north, or clear deep oligotrophic reservoirs like Dale Hollow or Norris Reservoir in East Tennessee. But these fish have forced us to alter our perception of bass habitat to include all of these streams and rivers, and they have their own associated problems and issues that we never had to think about in conjunction with bass, such as sedimentation and development along shorelines and road crossings and invasive species, mostly other bass species being introduced to where they shouldn't be and causing havoc with the natives. You know, a lot of that work has been centered on streams and rivers like this, and like the place that I was fishing with shoal bass last week, and the Flint River I fished in the fall. If nothing else, not only has the discovery and understanding of these fish expanded our awareness of black bass diversity, it has also expanded our awareness of the various threats that these species face, and how much more like the other fish black bass are than we ever really thought. We used to think that black bass were kind of like the carp of fish. I mean, they live anywhere. They are not really affected by development. They're certainly not affected by impoundment, you know, and all that kind of thing. And that's true of largemouth bass, but it sure isn't true of these species. And it's a useful reminder walking up this beautiful stream that looks like I'm in the Appalachian Mountains looking to catch a trout, and instead I'm here in Alabama trying to catch a bass. So as we consider black bass increasingly is part of a larger landscape and not just a single species to be managed, that brings a lot of factors into play that, again, we never had to think about much with black bass. Black bass were always managed for sport fishing. They were managed really without much of a conservation concept ever. And it wasn't because they didn't care about them, it was because they didn't think they needed any particular conservation actions. It was more terms of management actions than it is conservation actions. You know, for instance, aquatic vegetation. You know, we know that bass, largemouth bass, love aquatic vegetation. If there's too much of it, it kind of hurts their population in terms of producing big fish. It also affects the ability of anglers to fish. And so, you know, they try to manage aquatic vegetation to be a certain size, certain coverage, usually, you know, 20 to 40% is what you're would love to have, enough to galvanize the food chain, but not enough to hinder growth and condition of the bass. But that's not conservation. That's just management. You know, too much vegetation in a lake is not going to make a largemouth bass population go away. And having no vegetation in a lake is also not going to make a largemouth bass population go away. So that's always what it was. It was always in a context of managing things for the anglers, because black bass were largely thought to be bulletproof. Very little effect of degraded habitat or anything like that. Now we have to wrestle with the fact that, yes, sweeping changes in land use affect black bass as well. Maybe not largemouth bass, but all the other ones. And aren't they just as important? Yes, is the answer. And so that has made us really start doing a lot of what we call multidisciplinary partnerships. Because, you know, we're trained to deal with fish. We don't have the skill set to handle, you know, sedimentation and shoreline development and all of that. It's not the same as a reservoir or pond or lake. And so increasingly we are seeing these species, you know, kind of being in a conservation context across a lot of different disciplines, engaging organizations like NRCS to help get farmers on board to try to limit the amount of sedimentation coming off their lands, to keep cattle out of the rivers and streams, to stop erosion, to tear down mill dams and stuff like that are impeding migrations and also literally taking away habitat for these fish that have to have running water. And these all align with the goals of fisheries professionals who are working on the smaller fish, like we mentioned, the suckers and the darters and the minnows. And so it has become a large group of professionals working on these fish with very disparate backgrounds. And that's challenging in and of itself, but it's needed. And that's certainly how Texas has been approaching the Guadalupe Bass issue over there, and look how successful that has been. And that is the path, the most logical pathway towards success that all of these species are going to need if we're ever going to be able to conserve them and have them available for future generations. Yes, it's challenging. It's hard sometimes to be in a room full of people that you don't quite get, and they don't quite get you. And your backgrounds are different, your values are different, but we need to learn from each other and become stronger. And that has happened, without a doubt. And it's ongoing, and it's been quite a paradigm shift for how black bass have been handled, but a much needed one and a very valuable one. And I think we will start to see the benefits of this as these partnerships and multidisciplinary efforts continue.